Hello everyone, it's Wednesday, again just around midday, heading towards about 1 o'clock. Seems to be a good time to do these little updates because I get to check out all the newspapers online in the morning, and so I'll do the video now. Victoria has had 149 cases, I think it is, but the more important figure is 24 deaths, so things not going brilliantly there. But again, we've got to keep this in perspective. 24 deaths is not that many people. It's a tragedy if anyone dies, but it's not the end of the world. The more importantly, I'd like to know how many people are losing their lives due to the economic consequences of this stage 4 lockdown that's taking place in Victoria. Look, I thought I would just change the format a little bit this time and come up with some polls before I actually get into the nitty-gritty. It'll all be about Victoria this time. Sorry if it's boring you, but I think there's some rather interesting aspects to all this this time, so hopefully you'll find this a bit entertaining. Regarding the polls, I use the Poll Bludger, which has been around for some time now, and it's based in Canberra, and they source polls from various places. The most important one currently is the Essential poll, and that is showing only a slight dip in support for state governments regarding their handling of the coronavirus. Amazingly, in Victoria, Andrews has still got 47% support, which is less than 50, but it's still quite a reasonably high level of support. It's one of the lowest of the states, but he's still getting quite a bit of support from the populace, and maybe they're just so rusted on to Labor in Victoria that nothing's going to move them unless, like, he goes around biting the heads off babies. Maybe that'll have an effect, but who knows? Not even that might affect. I mean, sometimes you really do shake your head and wonder, and it makes me wonder what level of priority people in Victoria put on their civil liberties, because I was very shocked by the headlines about the extension of his emergency rule, and I know I wasn't the only one. It's caused a bit of a stir in a number of quarters, which I'll outline later. However, regarding the poll, the other aspect of the poll is that the most popular Premier is actually in WA, in Western Australia, and that's around 88% support that the Premier there's getting. So that's quite extraordinary support. The one caveat I'd like to put on this, though, is that rather than just looking at raw figures, we need to know who conducted the polls. In this case, it was Essential Research. And just to give you an idea of where they're coming from, they have an arrangement with The Guardian Australian, which is not exactly middle of the road or right wing. It's quite left wing, and you usually would have a polling company that's sympathetic to your cause doing your research. So I would have to think that Essential definitely leans to the left, and they may be overcooking some of these figures about state government support for the lockdown. It appears these days the left wing is much more authoritarian than the right. There's been a switch in the US and Australia and the UK as well, I would say. Always got to have the context of polls, and in this case, like I said, Essential is a left-leaning poll. To counterbalance that, the support for the coalition is up to 54% to 46% for the Labor Party. However, that poll is conducted by Roy Morgan Research, which hasn't been the most reliable pollster in the past, and if anything, they would definitely be leading to the right. So I'm trying to give you a fairly unbiased picture of this. I mean, we're more interested in actually the accurate polling than trying to push a particular jet. At least I am anyway. I don't want to give you information that's inaccurate. So that's basically the polling, but now we'll get into more coronavirus related issues, and the one that's starting to, what I didn't expect to see happen is actually there's talk of a legal action taken against the Victorian government, specifically the Chief Health Officer, regarding the extent of this particular lockdown and the threat of extending the emergency rule for another 12 months. So there is talk in in the wind about people forming Sarah Henderson, a Liberal politician in Victoria. She's pushing for this particular move to have sort of a class action against the chief medical officer. And what it means, unfortunately, is that, of course, the taxpayers, the poor old taxpayer, the ones who have to pay out if this is found to be an extreme legislation that is not valid. So it has to go to the chief medical officer to be assessed, and of course they probably just rubber stamp and say, yes, of course we're doing the right thing, but it can then be appealed at the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. So that's where the compensation could take place, but unfortunately it's going to come out of the poor old taxpayer's pocket. So it's not going to hurt Andrews. It may be embarrassing for Daniel Andrews, but it's just going to hurt Victoria, which it's a state, I think, at the moment that's in a downward trajectory economically, politically, and on many levels. And I feel very sorry for what's happening in Victoria. Being a Melbourne boy, born and bred, it's not nice seeing this happen to my hometown. One of the people that's actually prominent in this is my old, well, not my old friend, I shouldn't say that. I knew him as an acquaintance at La Trobe University, and that's Jim Penman, who's head of Jim Mowing. And of course he's unhappy because, again, they've got this restriction on all his contractors going out and mowing. It's just crazy stuff. I totally agree with him. He's taking a similar stance to how Elon Musk was acting with the authorities in California when they tried to basically shut down his vehicle building plant. And he just told them where to go. Basically, he had the power to do that. Jim Penman may not be Elon Musk, but he has got a bit of clout in Victoria, and I'm sure that that will have some effect. So I'm on the same page with my ex-La Trobe acquaintance. Now this one's quite amusing. This story continues on. This is a information source from news.com.au, which is the online version of News Corp in Australia, who publishes The Australian and other dailies. This particular information comes from the online source, and I get a feeling that maybe some of these reporters they've got working on this particular publication they're getting work experience, because they've just reported that the leader of the opposition, who they cite as Bill Shorten, has had a deluge of emails showing concern with Daniel Andrews' latest edict regarding the emergency rule. The problem here is that Bill Shorten is no longer the leader of the opposition. We had an election. Bill got dethroned after the election, and to my knowledge it is Anthony Albanese who is currently the leader of the opposition. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe news.com.au knows more than I do, and there has been a coup. But more likely, it's just another stuff up by the journalists in this country. And which is, as you know, I'm quite happy to put the boot into the mainstream media. And this is a classic example. I had to double check the date of this particular article. So I thought, well, hold on, maybe I've got an old article here. No, it was definitely published in August this year. So it's fresh off the press, as it were. So, oh boy, that is embarrassing. I think news.com.au better start looking at their hiring policies and get people that actually know who's actually in power. I mean, I don't think I'm being harsh here. I think this is pretty basic stuff. I'm just a guy in his apartment in Cairns, Queensland, and I can see that there's a major problem here. Yeah, and I find this particular line from Daniel Andrews incredibly amusing. He's trying to spin the extra 12 months of emergency rule as an insurance policy for Victorians. Well, I'll put it to you this way, Danny boy. If you're an insurance salesman, I'm not buying any policies off you. You're a lousy salesman, and that is just the biggest load of BS I've ever heard. But if you think that's weird, it just gets weirder and weirder with this story about the lockdown. The last section here is totally bizarre, I assure you. So let's get into it. These are the last articles here, and you've got to scratch your head. You're going to wonder what is happening in 2020. Has the world gone mad? And maybe it has. Okay, so this is about this is basically a story about the consequences of this increased lockdown, emergency rule. Apparently the rich are fleeing Victoria in numbers, and they're doing it any way they can, whether it be by using a luxury yacht to sail up from Victoria up to Queensland, or alternatively via private jet. That's the other way. And this is really bizarre, this one. It's not the most bizarre, but it's the second most bizarre. People, the rich are basically getting in these private planes, and they're just landing just across the border in a secluded airstrip in, say, Queensland, southern Queensland. And what they do is they get the pilot to switch off the transponder, which indicates where they're heading to air traffic control. Now, I don't know about you, but this sounds very much like Pablo Escobar stuff. It really is bizarre. It's the sort of thing you'd expect happening with drug smugglers from Colombia in the heady days of the drug cartels. But no, it's not. It's Australia 2020. It's the well-to-do who have the option to sneak in to another state without having to fill out the paperwork and go through the normal procedures. It is utterly bizarre, but this is the way it is for the rich and famous. They can basically do what they like. It reminds me again of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation where they had their two dogs. They smuggled them in on a private jet into Queensland again without doing the paperwork with quarantine. But this is actually indicating how desperate people who are well-to-do to get out of Victoria. I really do believe that Victoria will be drained of all its capital. This is a capital outflow. It's exactly the same thing you would have seen in the Cold War in, say, East Germany going across to West Germany. Yeah, like I say, it's bizarre. This is happening in Australia. It's happening in Australia because states all of a sudden are regarding themselves as independent nations with the power to block people entering and leaving their states. I mean, this is not what the Federation was supposed to be about. And I just think the whole thing is just a schmozzle. But that's not the most bizarre part of this story. The most bizarre part of the story, people are so desperate, the well-to-do, they're even prepared to go into packing boxes so that to actually, get presumably in a fetal position in a packing box and have themselves transported by semi-trailer across the border. So this is a bizarre twist on the people smuggling that you hear about many times now. We've got the rich and infamous actually smuggling their own bodies out in packing cases. It's just it's a sign of desperation, though, isn't it? It's showing it really is showing up how badly Andrews is running his state, and he's running it into the ground. You have talented, rich people leaving the state in droves. It's going to take Victoria decades to recover the way things are going. It really is. And the other thing that could happen to Victoria, of course, they're not self-sufficient in electricity. If things got really nasty, we could just decide to cut them out of the electricity grid, and then they'd be absolutely stuffed. But that's not going to happen, I don't think. But I mean, if they want to act like they're an independent nation, maybe they should learn a few hard lessons about that, and cutting off their electricity might be one way of finally getting the message through to Daniel Andrews and the people who keep voting him back into power. And power is what you need to take away from him, electrical power, and that might finally make the point. That's about it for today. I won't make it a particularly long one, although I probably have rambled on quite a bit. I hope everyone's keeping well, and again, people in Victoria, you have my sympathy, you really do. I know you didn't all vote for Labor, and there are a lot of people there who are probably tearing their hair out. So you do have my sympathy. I hope at least the weather's improving. But anyway, look, everybody, I hope you have a good day, and please do consider giving me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or make a comment, please. I would appreciate that. And if you can subscribe, that would be great too. I did get a couple of subscribers, but gee, I'm no mountaineer. I'm finding it heavy going, getting to that peak of 500. It's really heavy going for me. I do have a bit of a respiratory issue with cold weather too. So I went up the snow once, and yeah, it played havoc with my breathing. So it's a bit of a battle for me to get up that peak. So if you can make it a little easier for me, I'd appreciate it. Anyway, enough with the subscriber analogies with mountains. That's it for today, and what will befall us tomorrow, who knows? It's such a bizarre year, anything's possible.